All right. Here's the MGM lion at the start of the picture. Roar for us, little lamb. Roar for us. Meow. She likes me to open that I'm advertising to the neighborhood that I own some electronics. Whatever. They seem alright around here. But you never know. Better safe than sorry, I say. Okay, we were looking at books on this nonfiction shelf here. Thank you all for watching this channel, by the way. It's pretty cool that like 270 some people are following this channel right now. And a lot of people are returning viewers, you know, like, I mean, I kind of get it. I like to talk about books. I've started to find other channels that are kind of like this, and I've been watching them a bunch, and I'm like, I'm into it. And you don't really watch them fully all the time. At least I don't. You know, you kind of like put it on while you're doing dishes or like cleaning up your house or something. But in the video that cut off because my phone was too full, it's like stupid. I delete stuff and then it just goes to this trash site where it takes up just as much space. Then you have to go empty it from trash. I guess it's nice to have a safeguard, but IDK. This is an excellent essay collection I was saying in the last video, The Unreality of Memory by Elisa Gabbard. I think it's a very nice design too. Bought this one new the day it came out for reasons. One, to support Elisa Gabbard, who I kind of got to know through Twitter a little bit. He writes a wonderful poetry review column for the New York Times. Crazy. Amazing when people you know like get into things, even though I only know her through the online world. However, she wrote this one essay about how she was always trying to check out books about the Salem witch trial in Denver, but they were all getting called elsewhere by interlibrary loans. I think that was me that was calling them because I was researching Salem for a long time and I was doing interlibrary loans. Funny. But she's a very cool essayist, lives in Denver. Is great on Twitter, or was. I was on Twitter for a long time. Prolific. Always writing. A real master, you can tell. You can tell the greats when they talk about the work. I can anyway. The people that you like know you could learn something from. In part, it's people that have the weight of truth and justice behind them, behind their words. Genuine desires for knowledge. Seriousness of purpose and a serious engagement with what is. But check this out. This chapter takes its title from something I wrote. Here we are. After we talked on Twitter about the Cold War, a writer I know named Michael Farrell Smith sent me a link to a lyric essay he wrote that includes this snippet of faux dialogue, an apt depiction of life in the pre-apocalypse. And this is from my essay, 101 Jokes for Epileptic Children, and it involves me, present day, asking my past childlike self questions. Could you talk about the Challenger explosion in the context of the Cold War? I guess so. Well, all those shuttles were a product of the US-USSR space race, for one thing. And after the Challenger, when Chernobyl exploded and burned 3 months later, it felt as if some doomsday pattern was beginning. Everything was going to explode. Nothing was safe. Of course, I was just a kid, and what did I know? The world's more or less fine. So that's a quote from me. And then she says, I feel this way all the time now. Nothing is safe. Everything's fine. And this is a great chapter, this essay that she wrote about just like growing up at the end of the Cold War and still having those fears and realizing how real those fears were and how truly dangerous. I mean, that reality is, you know, we really have an off switch for humanity now. And then she talks about how about global warming, and she's like, climate change is a euphemism. Don't say climate change because what's going to happen is the planet is warming up. That's it. And that's really the big problem. Yeah, climate variability happens within that. That means like things change and extremes getting more extreme. But overall, the planet is warming. Every summer is the hottest summer on record now. If y'all notice, it's crazy. And this book just pulls no punches. And it also doesn't like wring hands pointlessly, I think. It says there are things that you can and should feel bad about and work to make better. And then there's things that are like, this is what we live with. And in a way, it's what humanity's always lived with. Like, we always have had the pendulum blade swinging above our necks, you know? Oh, there was just a gunshot. And I bet there'll be another. Gorbachev's Revolution. I read this. This is very interesting. For a while, I had so much knowledge about this time in history because I was writing chapters set then, and I really wanted to understand that Cold War worldview, global milieu, and this was left to me by my sister. Isn't that wild? When she was always putting things in a box to send to people, that she was always thinking of other people. She's just one of those kind of people, and was very generous and thoughtful in an analog age when people did things like send packages. So she'd have just like boxes in her room. She had like, if they ever had a spare room, there'd be boxes for all her friends and family, like sitting around with people's names on it. And she would just fill them over time and then send them off with like the nicest letter. Anyway, when she died in 2001 by her own hand, sadly, really a victim of brain chemistry, I think. Her husband sent the last box that she had filled for everybody, and this was in that last box. And strange work to have sentimental attachments about Gorbachev. And there's a big picture. Oh, did y'all hear that? See, I'm not making it up. I have PTSD from my house being shot up in 2022 and a number of subsequent attacks where our tires were slashed and our windows were smashed. Albuquerque gets rough sometimes, and there's some real punks out there. And I remember really liking this book, and I read it with a couple of other books on the topic, and they all work together really well. It's cool to know about the world and how it works, you know? Sometimes some poli-sci stuff and political history just hits the spot because it's like, it's good to know all these specific things. Really, you know, it's like the Ministry of Truth in 1984 a little bit. Everyone wants you to forget, you know? But it's important to remember things that affect your life. And, you know, Gorbachev, I bet she bought that at like the UMass bookstore. Yeah, I got to know Amherst a little bit when she was going there to school. Howard Zinn, the author of A People's History of the United States, a must-read work of history. A correcting of the record, I would say. Saying, don't forget this stuff. Forgive and forget, they say, but maybe not when it comes to the crimes of your government. You gotta, you know, we gotta remember things. They're doing all this stuff with our names on it, you know. Dang, what a cover, honestly, but Anyway, that's a good collection of essays. This book I want to read, I like Howard Zinn. He's a truth teller. It amazes me how many of his books I see in schools. I'm glad. I just want to see him reading it more. Gorbachev. Okay, here's something I'm glad I own. Where did this come from? The American Language by H.L. Mencken, Supplement 1. What? You know, it's crazy. I really have no recollection of buying this. How I know? I bet it's from Family Thrift. They have stapled these pages. That's how I could tell. I don't know what that green sticker was from. H.L. Mencken was a bit of not the coolest guy ever, kind of a bigot sometimes. Classist, down-punching bigot. But, like, he thought Okies were like trash, like human trash, a plague on the face of the U.S., and he editorialized against them in a very racist way. I mean, not racist because they were white, I guess, but, you know, very classist, eugenicist sort of mentality, I feel like. Anyway, I'm fascinated by the topic of American English, and this is incredible. And H.L. Mencken's dead, and I'm happy to own this. Supplement 1, okay. There might be more volumes to get. I should look that up. Handsome, handsome, handsome. An entirely new version of the standard work on its subject, rewritten almost completely. This edition contains 325,000 words of text running to 800 pages. That must have been so annoying to count back in the typewriter days. Concluding with a full word list and an index. A thoroughly scientific treatise on the development of American English, it is at the same time an extremely diverting piece of reading, full of odd stuff to be found nowhere else. There's no other book on the subject which even remotely approaches the value and scope of this one. Oh my gosh, I would love to know this stuff. So much new material had accumulated after the publication of the fourth edition of the American Language in 1936 that a separate volume was deemed advisable to contain it. Though of particular usefulness in conjunction with the American language, the supplement is nevertheless an independent work and may be read without reference to its predecessor. That's what I'm talking about now. That's cool. Oh, these are beautiful. What? But this is from around 1960, early 60s. Cool. 62, this printing. Okay. From a 1919 book. I want to just read these. Language is so interesting. One time I listened to a whole great lecture courses series, maybe a couple times, on the origins of human language, going all back to Proto-Indo-European and evolutionary biology. And like every word for hunger has a swallowing sound in almost every language, and every word for thirst has a sibilant, hissing, dry-mouthed sound. These really interesting things that Steven Pinker points out in The Language Instinct. Anyway, I want to read these. What does this have to do with, surnames? Oh, what a footnote. Skyscraper, says Charles White in a letter to the London Morning Post, January 26, 1935, was applied to Queen Anne's Mansions, an apartment house in Queen Anne's Gate, London, near St. James Park, in the early 80s, before American cities had any structures of their present variety. but this seems to have been a nonce use, not generally imitated. The Oxford Dictionary's first quotation is from the Boston, Massachusetts Journal, November 1891. Skyscraper has been used to designate a sky sail, 1794. A tall horse, 1826. An exaggerated story, 1841. And a tall man, 1857. Funny. There's one for Rubberneck. Well, I hate that there's so many books I want to read. I mean, I guess that's a good problem to have, and owning them is good. And then I'll see more at the library, and I'll buy more. I'll die with many of these unread, sadly. Wow. This cheerful thought has been brought to you by this channel. Okay, this one's got a foreword by Howard Zinn, but it's by Nancy Chang. Silencing Political Dissent. Yeah. How post-September 11th anti-terrorism measures threaten our civil liberties. Ugh. When my sister died in 2001, I was on that walk across the country, and I had to fly home, and it was like 1 month after 9/11. I got searched everywhere, on the plane, over and over. I was super tan. I was bearded. That was a nightmare. I experienced everything but cavity searches. I mean, I was worried about that sometimes. I'm like, I'm doing a charity hike. Here's a brochure. Okay, we'll read. I love these slim books because you can pick them up and read them in an afternoon. If you ever know you're like subbing somewhere or something like that, and you're going to be in an empty classroom, get in my little slim book. Done that a few times. Read a Chomsky one not too long ago that way. Yeah, it's a crazy world, man. Ugh, witch hunt. History of persecution. Yeah, I told you I'm into this topic. My ancestors were all over this story. It's like a family tale. Many of them signed a petition to free Mary Bradbury and probably helped smuggle her out of Salisbury into Maine, then Acadia. One brother of an ancestor, so that means child of two ancestors, was a main accuser and got a woman hanged. Not cool, bro. He was described in court documents as a red-headed devil and a red-headed rogue, so I must have some red hair in my family way back, which is not the case now. It's all brunettes. Salem witch trials and the witch trials of the world in general. Very interesting story. I'm sorry, women. I'm sorry about the patriarchy in that chapter. So a lot of men were victim of all that nonsense too. It was really a triumph of irrationality and fear. So this looks good. Did I read this? I don't know. You ever get to so many books on a topic when you're doing research, and then you read like 10 of them, and you're like, okay, I can write this piece. You don't always get to everything right away. And then you want to finish all the research, but maybe you do later. Anyway. Lenin. You know, he's actually a very good writer, and he did a good job of elucidating a lot of Marx's ideas. You know, a lot of people would have him out as just like the worst villain or something like that. I honestly don't know. But I know there's a lot of propaganda against Soviet leaders in our country, even when they have very good things to say about collectivist thinking and different ways of organizing society. I've owned a few Lenin books over the years, but I don't think I've ever read one all the way through. Like a simple edition like that, though. The Twitter radicals that I like to hang out with sometimes and have sympathy and, for their arguments. A lot of them admire Lenin as a writer. I do not think of him as like someone like Hitler or something like that, which a lot of people want to put Lenin and Stalin in Hitler's company, and I'm like, it's not the same. Also, we would not have won World War II necessarily without the help of the USSR. They lost the most soldiers. They were the ones who could survive the winters like nobody else because they were accustomed to living in those climates. This is such a good book. I feel so connected to Charlemagne. I felt like this. I was like, oh my gosh. Kind of Charlemagne dreams and Charlemagne era dreams. This book was written in the year 700. That's so insane. This is a 1,300-year-old book. Somewhere around there, 700-ish. Classic college-used saves, things on there. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The introduction was all down on it, like, oh, there's nothing in here you can't find in other works. I'm like, yeah, if you're some PhD scholar that's obsessing over this stuff. This was a fascinating read because it was by somebody in Charlemagne's court who was like kind of considered him a friend and admired him. And Charlemagne was a ruthless guy. Like there's one part in this life story where he just like kills all these people in a Germanic group by beheading them, like 2,000 people in a day. And it's pretty vicious. This was in like the Franco-Germanic collections of countries that existed before Germany and France in that area. One thing he did that was really valuable was he ordered all the old songs, especially sung about the deeds of kings, preserved and written down. And that was like pretty radical to do at the time. What? Writing it down? But it's why we have a lot of records from that time, of this really interesting variety. And like their songs also contain history and mythology, so that's rad. But Charlemagne is so interesting. I mean, I think Charlemagne kind of provoked me into an interest of history, honestly. I was in a middle school social sciences, what do you call those classes? Social studies class. Mr. Berube was teaching at Roosevelt Middle School up in the Sandia Mountains east of Albuquerque. Picture a spectacled guy with dark hair jumping around, real high energy. Some students later got him fired by accusing him of throwing a desk, but I saw what he did. He just rattled the desk that was near him, and these punk kids that just were awful got him fired with a bunch of lies. I went and gave my 2 cents because I was like, he didn't do it. He didn't throw it at her. That didn't happen. Some of those kids were punks. Anyway, he was teaching Charlemagne, and I just remember being so bored by it. I was like, why should I be interested in this? Who cares? But then I honestly just kept asking myself those questions. And I don't know, I just thought back to that time a bunch in my life. I ended up being really into history. I had a few different like events that like made me realize, oh, this stuff's rad. One, learning about the 1776 Dominguez Escalante expedition right at the site of where it happened and reading about it and being like, what? Oh, that was right here. What? The crossing of the fathers at Lake Powell. When you just have that tactile real world connection to a work, it's so cool. But eventually, like I realized, well, I'm interested in Charlemagne because I'm interested in everything. And I'm interested in modern settlement patterns and the world that we live in and why it is the way that it is. And a lot of that stuff started with this fella. And after I first read this, it was fresh in my mind. It's a very thin work. You could reread it a bunch. In fact, I bet that would be cool to do. But isn't that cool? His name is just Einhard. Love it. There's a good historical intro. I dug this book. Charlemagne's interesting. I had a weird dream about him afterward. You know, I felt the collapse of time. I was in his era. Oh, it was so cool. It's a beautiful Alaska guidebook, and one of the only ones I've hung on to. It's helped me in my research. You know, when you're like, you get real nitty gritty and specific into places, you hold on to things like this for a while. But I'm like, this is cool. It's really nice. This was really useful. It has subjects on all the parts of Alaska. I'm telling y'all, Alaska is freaking beautiful. Look at that fireweed. Oh, those mountains. I hitchhiked all over that state. It wakes something up in me. Once you've been expanded, think of Oliver Wendell Holmes' quote, one's mind, once stretched to a new dimension, will never again return to its original shape. Like, you know, this is what Alaska did to me, seeing mountains that big just on every side. Ho hum, there's a 20,000 foot mountain. Like everything is so tall. Maybe not that. I don't know what heights they are, but it was just like you're surrounded by amazingness. One time I was in a car that got in a car wreck near Cooper Landing, Alaska, which is like this narrow mountain pass where the mountains come right down to the road on both sides in the most narrow V, and you cross over a river and a bridge. And I was driving back from a folk festival in Anchorage with a group of people. I wasn't driving. We were listening to Bob Dylan's Ballad of a Thin Man. And my friend Patty hit a patch of ice and really wildly overcorrected. She was driving. And we spun out on this bridge and we hit the edge of the railing and it almost went into the river. I mean, if we had just hit it a little harder, like we could have ended up in that icy Kenai River and we would have died. Oh my gosh. And we got out and we were just like in Lost Horizon, like that old movie version of the James Hilton book, the musical one that suddenly becomes a musical. I love it. I love it. I love it. And we get out and it's just crazy. And the car's like wrecked up and won't drive. And we see one lighted house and we walk to it. And it turns out it's just one of our friends that we know really well from the Kenai Soldotna music scene. His name was Fritz. He's since died in a plane crash, sadly. But he invited us in and we all were just like, what are the odds? We'd like crash in this extreme winter weather. And yours, wow, crazy. Anyway, how did I get on that story? I don't know. Alaska just takes up a lot of internal real estate for me. You know, it's got a lot of mythology and notions around it that aren't all good. And it's a wild place, but the year and a half I spent there was a very transformative one. A lot of things happened. I mean, I got 4 essays out of it in my book. One about commercial fishing up there, one about a depressing winter, one about hitchhiking around in the spring with a hippie girlfriend and a dog, and one about hitchhiking down and up and all over northern Canada. Yeah, Alaska is important to me. I don't know why. I mean, No, it is. It's special. It's really like, it's a wonderful place. Northern Canada is amazing too. That border is a modern one. It's the same place. Oh, but I need to finish the thought on Charlemagne. I got interested in him because ultimately I decided that there's only just one story. There is just one story, and it's the story of everything. There's no extra parts. You know, Nietzsche said, an intelligent person, once they learn a new idea, it immediately takes its place as a link in a chain. And I think that's an awesome goal, way to be. And the more you read, the more that happens, I find. But Charlemagne led up to, you know, later history. 1066 conquest led up to later history. I mean, everything like led to something, and we're living in the after effects of everything. You know, when I was working at Domino's, I was like, there's never been a more appropriate metaphor. It's so great I'm writing a memoir and I can say I worked at Domino's. Next I need to work at Target. There's a greater than zero chance of that happening. I did apply once, but then got a different job. Symbolism is funny. And when you know, as my friend Danny says, you are the author of your own life. We recorded a podcast today. He wants to do a podcast about writing, and I got to find somewhere to post that. And I think it's really cool because he's got great ideas on writing. Anyway, the Bible Unmasked. This is from a big collection. I'm pretty sure this person whose collection I got this from was writing a book about everything. It was such a cool, wide-ranging, interesting collection. A former teacher at Holy Ghost, this like private Catholic school here in town. And but there were atheistic books, socialistic books, communistic books. That might be where that Lenin came from too. There were pro and con, every kind of religious book. It was very interesting. This one looks like a bit of an expose. This looks like the kind of book referenced in Sinclair Lewis's book, Elmer Gantry, which I love. You've got to read The Bible Unmasked by Joseph Lewis. I wonder if this is mentioned in there. Classic. 1926. Oh. 1958 printing. 28th edition. Wow, popular. This book probably changed some lives, put people on a different course. Wow. Glad I have this. Should it be in the antique section? Yeah, probably, huh? Yeah. 50s is old, and it's kind of got that, well, I don't know. Let me know in the comments, because I'm insane and have no ability to make a decision myself. Now what's this here? Vintage Deacon. Roger Deacon, waterlog. All right, I got this for a reason. Oh, because it's psychogeographical and insane. In 1996, Roger Deacon, the late great nature writer, set out to swim through the British Isles, from the sea, from rock pools, from rivers and streams, tarns, lakes, lochs, ponds, lidos, swimming pools and spas, from fens, dikes, moats, aqueducts, waterfalls, flooded quarries, even canals. Deacon gains a fascinating perspective on modern Britain. Personal journey and a bold assertion of the native swimmer's rights to roam. He shares an unforgettable celebration of the magical water. That's great. Love it, love it, love it. Haven't read it, want to, will. Another potential logline. A Door in the Hive. This is a wonderful collection of poetry by Denise Levertov. One story in particular, I feel like maybe I read it once. I'm going to read it again. It's so good. Not story, poem. Yeah, you'll notice I always mix up words and art. It's because I think in a multimedia way and I move back and forth between all these things in my head. It's all the same, man. As Welcome to Night Vale once tweeted, don't forget, at your smallest unit of existence, you're indistinguishable from a forest fire. Something like that. I love that. You know, it's all a puree of atoms, man. Protons and all that biz. Check this poem out in here by Denise Levertov. Okay, when I say I like poetry, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about poems like the one I'm just about to read you. Distanced. If one's fate is to survive only sorrow, one has no right to the name survivor. Shepherds in summer pastures watched the invaders, a rectangular wave, advance on the city far below. Smoke and towers falling. A straggling river pouring from breached walls. This high, no noises reached them. They marveled, they sorrowed. Each had wished someday to see for himself the city's alien glories. All felt pity and dread. They knew the river was people fleeing. They could see no faces and no blood. I mean, wow. Denise Levertov, everybody. The I Ching, or Book of Changes. I keep this book because it was significant to me. I lived an indie movie once. My Before Sunset or whatever. Before Sunrise. I was reading The Monkey Wrench Gang. She was reading God, a biography. We were the only people reading in the coffee shop. Next thing I knew, I was quitting my job and we were on a road trip together. It was winter in Alaska and the northern lights were out above us the whole time. It was just incredible. She had this book with her, which she gave to me. Look at this. This was like inside. Mike's I Ching, 2699. 141256. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. It was like White Nights from Dostoevsky, though. It wasn't even like that romantic of a thing, really. I think there was like romantic tension, but we literally were just like two wild weirdos on a road trip. She's since become a writer, too. She wrote a book about hunting in Alaska. And she had great ideas back then. I still remember some of the novel ideas she described to me. And we were just like so alive in art. She was chain smoking Camel Reds. I was like, who is this person? Those who are steadfastly balanced, humble, and in harmony with the sage inherit everything under the sun. I don't think I was balanced at all at the time. I was all, woo! I spoke a language of one word. The I Ching indicates here that you increased your personal power by purifying your thoughts, actions, and attitudes. That's possible. I don't know. I was always trying to think of. As a result, you begin to have a far-reaching influence shining on others as the sun shines on everything under the heavens. Because your power is so great, it's especially important to maintain correct attitudes and behavior now. You should have listened to that. You know, I was like quitting jobs and having fun and going on road trips and stuff, but I still feel like I like often let fear dictate my life a lot. Time. First line. In the early days, your peace of mind will be challenged. By maintaining humility, detachment, and alertness to the approach of evil, you ensure that your greatest possession endures. The most valuable, second line. The most valuable possessions are equanimity, modesty, and interdependence. With these, you can travel anywhere and meet with good fortune. So just general good advice, maybe. 5 and 6. Do not chase others to try and influence them. Your knowledge of truth should be shared modestly and sincerely with those who are naturally drawn to it. By conscientiously honoring the sage, you remain modest and good. The fullest blessings of the universe fall on those who are devoted in this way. Mike's I Ching, February 6, 1999. These were both moved from the weird books section. I'm looking at this on the bed now because my phone was at 5%. Yikes. This looks like a beautiful book. The Secret Life of the Forest. I love that title. In the book, I used that in a book essay that was all book titles. I'm going to read that on the channel someday, maybe. Because I'm desperate for content. Man, this is beautiful. I love these old school paintings. Incredible, or drawings, whatever. Wow. Oh, wow. Every page, a masterpiece. Love this, love this, love this, love this. I bet it's full of cool insights. I feel like I've experienced the secret life of the forest in moments just by spending a lot of time there and quietly. When I was young in Alaska, I used to know this couple, Aaron and Amy, and they were some of the most delightful eccentrics I've ever met in my life. And they claimed that when they went into the woods at night, they turned into elves, and that their ears grew pointed, and their teeth changed, and they shrank down a little, and they moved with great quickness through the woods. And they were so wild and flitted in such a way everywhere. And I was like, yeah, maybe. They also claimed they once turned into cats, and I was like, if anyone turned into cats, it's you two, for sure. I was actually kind of sad when I talked to Aaron years later, and he was like, oh yeah, ha ha ha, we used to say that. Maybe he just felt uncomfortable because it was me. I have to believe that you still believe, Aaron. And then this book is all about Coronado's journey with modern photos. Books like this are really interesting. They're a great way to learn history and feel connected to them. I've always thought it'd be really neat to recreate a historic journey of some sort. I used to think about the Dominguez Escalante route of 1776, because that's an amazing journey. It was a circular journey, about 2,000 miles. They covered more ground than Daniel Boone or anybody like that, Davy Crockett. And yet, because they didn't find an alternate route to Santa Fe and suffered great hardships, the church disenfranchised them and considered the whole expedition a failure. But they were the first Europeans to see much of the West. And one of the things that's so interesting, this is a book about Coronado, and I'm going off about Dominguez Escalante. One of the things that's so interesting about them is that they spread these Bible stories everywhere they went. And when John Wesley Powell came through in the 1870s, I think, or late 1860s, he heard these stories, but they had been transformed and filtered through native lore ever since. And so, like in the story of Moses, he has two faces, and he takes off one of his faces. And those are the words of Aaron from the Bible. That's crazy. And there's other things like that. Read John Wesley Powell's An Exploration of the Colorado River and Its Canyons for a really great section about that. That's kind of my favorite part of the book. Just to see how folklore changes and lore changes and how a story can change. It's this ultimate intergenerational game of telephone. Incredible. So, To the Inland Empire by Stuart Udall. I wonder what they consider the Inland Empire. I think about that part of California that is like where the Fontana ironworks were that polluted all the air above LA that Mike Davis writes about in City of Quartz. But if this is about Coronado, it would just be about coming up from Mexico through New Mexico, ending up in Kansas. Pretty cool. Okay, this video is 30 minutes long. Plenty long. Let's call it good, I guess. Everyone's doing well. Today I interviewed with Nob Hill News, this great new newspaper that's going to be coming out in April, just about one part of Albuquerque. We had such a lively, animated conversation, me and this very cool editor, that I think the whole coffee shop was resenting us by the end. Like, shut up. Sorry. I know you're all doing your own stuff. We were all like, yeah. No, it was great. I love talking with fellow writers and creators that like believe in the transformative power of writing, especially when it comes to place. That's like a big theme for me. And so we'll see what happens. I thought I was going to write more history stuff for this rag. I use that term affectionately. But I think it's going to be more culture stuff and public policy. What? Also, tomorrow I start a subbing job. And it's a really unique one, unlike any I've ever done before. It's a clerical job. I'm going to be working the front desk at a high school, at my old high school. Ugh, insane. I am truly trapped in a time loop. I am Ouroboros. The past is infinitely in my face. Maybe that's all of us. Life sure seems written sometimes. It's wild. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. I've been following people back on this channel and trying to like watch a couple of your videos or something. Like I pretty much anyone I know who's following me, I'll check out your videos if you have them. And I've actually seen some cool stuff. I really like when people just like post a clip of something, just like here's some trees, here's traffic, here's a bit of life. I'm reminded of this guy, Harry Smith, who did the Anthology of American Folk Music and his wonderful recordings of just like people at a picnic in the 1950s. It's just audio. You hear fireworks going off in the background, people just chatting in the 50s. Like every little thing ends up being a part of history. That was a big revelation for me when I wrote my book, Towns of the Sandia Mountains, A History of the Sandias. And I collected photos for it. It was one of those Images of America visual books. This is my book, my first published book, Towns of the Sandia Mountains. That's Jacob Stuckel, a gardener, watching his daughters play below in a 1900 exactly photo of Tejares Canyon, where now there's a freeway and the town of Carnuel and Tejares Canyon. It's got lots of historic photos and so on. Why did I bring this up? I don't remember. Why did I bring that up? Ugh, losing my train of thought too much these days. Maybe I need some vitamins or something. More exercise. Yeah, I know I do. All that stuff. I don't know what it is, but I'm just feeling optimistic about the world lately. I have a lot of reasons not to, but I kind of feel like it's good about things lately. Like, I don't know. I think something switched over in my brain chemistry. I think I tricked it with fake optimism for long enough that now I have like a little bit of real optimism. I faked it until I maked it. So try that, folks. All right. Well, this has been a nonfiction bookshelf. Let's call it, I think it's shelf 6. Shelf 6 part 2. These potatoes are an offering to someone in that photo. Please don't smite us. Here we have brought you our finest potatoes. You know how it is. You've got to appease the ancient ones in all their incarnations. Give the proper offerings or no one is safe. No, but really, Mike, why do you have 3 potatoes in a bowl? You know, sometimes someone says, here's a bag of produce. Do you want some? And there's 3 potatoes in it. And you got to put them somewhere. Anyway, and you don't refrigerate potatoes, really, you know? Here's this bowl that a retiring teacher just gave you that she made herself at a middle school. It all seems so destined. From the Big Bang to now, it all led up to this. These 3 potatoes in a bowl on a shelf before a picture. I like nonfiction. I've been thinking about nonfiction. Maybe after I finish the paperback project of reading all the paperbacks on the literary fiction shelf, then I'll read just this shelf of the nonfiction paperback overflow section. Because nonfiction has its own lessons to teach writers. And it has its own lessons to teach us as people, like about our world and how things work. I don't really want to read all of this. I mean, I do, but it'll just be another 5 years after this project. All right, there's just one nonfiction shelf left in this case. Thanks for watching, everybody. Y'all are cool. Stuff over here is Southwestern stuff. We'll get to that eventually. We have more nonfiction here, but I'm like, let's break it up with something. Maybe we could go real different. I hope I don't lose all my subscribers with the sci-fi section, but I think I might do sci-fi next. It'll be something just a little different. And there's some fantasy and genre stuff mixed in there too. These sections used to be so much bigger. This was I had twice as many sci-fi paperbacks. I got real. I donated a bunch of them to Liminal Spaces, my favorite sci-fi YouTube channel. Oh, it was like cutting out a pound of flesh. No, that's not true. In fact, I had a really vivid dream, and in the dream, I gave these books to Liminal Spaces, and then I was like, I better do that for real. Felt like Philip K. Dick would be proud. Liminal Spaces reps Philip K. Dick big time, and I'm on board with that. Great writer. First, one last nonfiction shelf. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Safely home. Another Tonke brick. See the PG Woodhouse video for more deets on this. Sorry, if you want to learn about the brick, you must also learn about a British comic author. That's the deal. All right, I'm experiencing a feeling I believe is called hunger, so I'm gonna go. Talk to y'all later. Thanks for this. You make talking to myself feel just a little less crazy.